What's up, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of Rams Brothers. I'm your host, Dean, and I'm joined, as always, by the other great hosts of this show, Nick. And Nick, we have mini camp is this week. The season feels like it's right around the corner, although it's just a couple of months away. But first and most importantly, how are you?
I'm doing fantastic, Dean. It's summer. Your birthday's in like 2 days. The big 3-0 for Dean. So make sure to drop a like and subscribe exclusively for him, not for me, for Dean.
Yeah, I'll take a like and subscribe for my birthday. How about if not for me, how about you like and subscribe for Cooper Kupp's 30th birthday, which coincidentally is on the same day.
Same day. Dean and Kupp separated at birth. Am I actually not Dean's brother? Stay tuned. Listen to this episode and find out.
Yeah, I don't know. I think if you saw Nick and I catch footballs next to each other and then Cooper Kupp and I catch footballs next to each other, I think everybody would understand why you and I are brothers and why it's not Cooper Kupp and I.
Oh, I thought I was going to catch some shade.
I know what direction you thought I was going into. You thought you were going to catch some flack there, but you're a talented pass catcher. I've seen you. Seen you.
It was my position of choice.
Yeah, you're a good inline tight end. You're future Davis Allen. I thought you were more like a Bryson Hopkins, but going under a suspension and not being able to stay on the field, having one moment in the Super Bowl, it all ties into the conversation that we're going to have for today.
Right. So today, a little Nick Vespi lore just to drop for you guys. I was officially on the LA Wildcats in that 2020 season
what happened?
Of the XFL, but I got cut before. I was really just there to meet The Rock, and it didn't work out. So,
yeah, The Rock is going to need your help financially if you want to support him in any way.
I know.
Between that and Black Adam. Yeah, I know. He's got a lot going on. But I guess the Rams do too. Right now, it's mandatory minicamp. So this week, it's the 13th through the 15th is mandatory minicamp. As you guys are seeing on Twitter and across social media, you can see that Jordan from The Athletic is covering. They have LA Times there. It's fully open to the media, at least for today. So you get some pretty cool storylines coming out of minicamp. For today, you get more details on the offensive defensive line. I saw that Joe Noteboom was out there practicing, so some encouraging signs potentially that you could see over the next couple of weeks, specifically this week. And then we talked about joint practices, joint training camps that are coming up with the Raiders and the Broncos as they're progressing through some of their more detailed practice sessions. And then preseason starts up on August 12th. But the reason why we wanted to get together and do this episode was to just kind of get a leg up on the depth chart, because I think there's going to be a lot of really interesting conversations. And obviously, this is the first year that rule is implemented, where it's a pretty severe drop off from right now, today, June 13th to August 29th. You have to go previous years. What we were looking at was every team kind of had staggered dates and ranges for gradually reducing their roster to its initial 53-man group. So last year, what the Rams had to deal with was August 16th was the deadline to trim the roster from 90 to 85 players. August 23rd, they trimmed it from 85 to 80. And then August 30th was the deadline to trim it all the way down from 80 to 53. So this year, it's just a drop dead date. August 29th, 2023, they have to be down to 53 players. So with everything kind of coming out in camp, some of the storylines around the quarterbacks, the position battles with the wide receivers, they roughly, Nick, have like 14, 15 guys in the building right now at the wide receiver position. There's a pretty severe logjam at defensive line. A lot needs to be figured out at defensive back. So we kind of wanted to take you guys through this fun little exercise of projecting the way too early projection of the 2023 Rams depth chart.
I also just think this year there's going to be a lot. I would love to get a number on like last year's free agent signings versus like the following year, because when you go cold turkey like that, you go from 90 to 53. And I know that there's that emergency quarterback this year, so it's kind of like 90 to 54.
And I think they have a couple of positions that you could allocate towards injured players or something like that. I think there's an extra 2 spots or something that they're working on.
It's going to make it more difficult, particularly in preseason too, for these guys to be, good to go and not really have any questions going forward. But should be fun. It's cool. I wonder why they did that. Was that like a unanimous vote? Like, was somebody like, I just don't know where that came from.
Yeah, I'm not entirely sure. I think when it comes to like breaking down, the roster and having final cuts and everything, maybe it's just a little bit easier, right? Because it's all stuff that you're already kind of doing anyway behind the scenes. You probably have a pretty good idea of what your 53-man roster depth chart is going to look like before all of those cuts are implemented. So maybe it's just an easier step. And it also gives players a couple of extra weeks, right? If they want to kind of stay along with the process, a couple of extra practice squad checks or whatever it might be that they could still earn. So I'm not sure exactly how it came together within the collective bargaining agreement, but I do know that it's new as of this year. So what we're looking at with the depth chart for this year, I think is really interesting. So what we did is we wanted to do a side-by-side comparison of everything that we looked at from 2022 to 2023. So everybody that made the roster back in 22 versus what we're projecting in 2023. So obviously back in 2022, what you saw at the quarterback position was Matthew Stafford, John Wolford, and Bryce Perkins. Completely different this year. It seems like almost every single one of the Rams' position groups, if not every single one, inclusive of kicker, punter, and long snapper, all have a rookie tied into it. Last year, that wasn't the case across the running backs, the quarterbacks. We're going to go maybe receivers in that case, right? So I think there's a lot of new faces, a lot of new personalities to get to know, but I think there's going to be a lot of really difficult decisions to be made. So if you look at the key on the left-hand side of your screen, everybody that's highlighted in orange, I think, is on the border to make the roster.
Right.
And Nick, you could agree with me, disagree with me as we go. I know before this episode started, you had mentioned, are we even going to keep Brett Rippon on the roster, right? Because of the emergency quarterback situation, does that position or spot on the roster potentially have to open up for another player? So, I think all really good talking points that kind of lead into the discussion of how are we going to craft this 53-man roster with roughly 45 new faces in the building.
Right. It's going to be interesting. Just like right off the bat, QB, Matthew Stafford last year, John Wolford, Bryce Perkins. And we saw both of them in preseason, like somewhat ball out in some extent where we were like, oh, I think we're going to keep both of these guys just in case. And then like, lo and behold, the in case happens and both of them were not even close. And now when you look at the QB, we drafted Stetson Bennett somewhat earlier than expected. And, Wolford and Perkins aren't even on this depth chart anymore. So they're not even at camp. So right. It's just from the most important position downward. It's a lot of new faces. And it's kind of fun too, because Brett Rippon or Ripon, Ren and Stimpy, whatever you want to call him. I'm gonna be honest with you. I know really not a lot about him, but apparently he's better than Dresser Wynn.
Yeah, I mean that's what I'm saying. It's a lot of brand new names, right? If Dresser Wynn and Brett Ripon want to go head to head in quarterback competition to fight for that third spot, if the Rams are alluding to the fact that they're going to keep a third quarterback on the roster, that could be an interesting development over the next couple of months. So keep your guys' eyes on that, right? That third quarterback spot, because we know Matthew Stafford and Stetson Bennett are locked in 1 and 2. And we know in previous years, I think it was 2021, the Rams only kept 2 quarterbacks on the roster. Last year, they decided to keep 3 because, 2 is not enough. And now the emergency quarterback rule has emerged, and it does make sense to keep an extra guy. So, but potentially that Ripon spot could open up for another player. And then when you look at the running backs, right, like at the 4 spot, Ronnie Rivers, I know was somebody that in the middle of the season last year, Matthew Berry was talking about him, having a starting caliber role. And I think he started 1 game over Cam Akers, and, there was some potential there. And then in the offseason, he won a bunch of money gambling. Like, it's such a strange storyline as the 4th running back on the roster. But last year it was Jake Funk, right? And Jake Funk was a really interesting conversation. Like, is he going to be a legitimate contributor? Is he going to be a special teams player? He was cut halfway through the season, and I believe he ended up with the Chargers. Yeah. So, and that's to make way for another open roster spot for another player.
And also, like last year, I remember, thinking a lot that Cam Akers was going to step up, but then also Darrell Henderson was going to have like a fantastic year. And right. I don't even know if he's on a team right now.
No, he's not. He's not. Yeah, he's not.
I can't believe he's not
released from Jacksonville. Yeah, he's released from Jacksonville. He's not been invited to camp. I mean, between Darrell Henderson and Cam Akers, you figured one of those players were going to be a surefire starter in the league at some point. But the way that the running back market has just continued to evolve, what's coming out with Saquon Barkley and Josh Jacobs not signing their franchise tags, Saquon saying that he doesn't necessarily want to reset the market, but he wants a deal that's respectful, because it seems like the entire running back market is completely disrespected. Like, Cam Akers is on the last year of his contract. I doubt that he expects to get re-signed by the Rams. At this point.
I unless this year for him, even if it isn't above expectation year, it would have to be like a lights out season where they rely on him so heavily for the Rams to give him a contract.
Yeah, we're talking like upwards of 1,200 yards and 10 touchdowns, and looks like he's never been hurt before.
Upwards of 10, I would think, too.
You know what I mean? Like, exactly.
Like, like astronomical Gurley-esque season. And it's just so funny, too, that like part of the reason why McVay was just such this offensive guru when he came in the league is because he had Todd Gurley as one of his guys. And then he proved that he can adapt without the running back position when your Super Bowl running back number one is Darrell Henderson. You know what I mean? So
yeah, never forget winning the Super Bowl with the 31st overall ranked run game throughout the 2021 season. A little bit scary coming down.
Yeah, but Henderson stepped up when he needed to in that game. He had some great plays.
Yeah, and so did Cam Akers coming back in that playoff stretch outside of the fumbles, right, in the Tampa Bay game, which were a little bit nerve-wracking. Cool. But, I mean, like back to your point with Todd Gurley, I think what's really interesting about the entire running back market is you could have a year like Todd Gurley. You could have 3 or 4 years like Todd Gurley and still get cut on your second contract. Yeah. Like that's how cutthroat the running back market is right now, and it's how disrespected those players are despite how much they actually contribute to the offense.
And at the same time, I'm sitting here and I'm like, Saquon Barkley, like, I feel for you, man. You probably should be making more money. But they decided to pay Daniel Jones like too much. And now you're kind of in a position where it's like, can we coexist? Not really, because I feel like I'm a much bigger contributor to this offense than you are. But yeah, I guess they got to go hand in hand, and he's going to have to understand that running backs, it's just, they're not getting paid the same way.
Yeah, exactly right. I mean, it's a new world with running backs, and it's kind of been the development has been, let's try to draft a late round rookie. Let's try to draft an Isaiah Pacheco in the 7th round and have him contribute to the Super Bowl, and then have him contribute on a really, really low valued contract at the 7th round pick all the way throughout those next 3 years is the true benefit of being able to draft somebody late and having them be a high profile contributor to your offense. And it's the way of the running back market right now. It's pretty scary.
And you know what? Maybe Zach Evans completely shines,
I mean, the way that he's built, not sure if he has the mental makeup to be able to do so, but it seems like he has all the physical attributes to be able to do so. If he proves to us that he could be a 3-down back, he's a pass protector, he's involved in every phase of the pass game, the run game, then I have a lot of confidence that he could be that player.
Yeah.
Just remains to be seen.
It definitely could happen. And then let's move on to the wide receivers, because I think this is truly what will make or break the season is the lineup of guys that are going to be coming out here in this core, because you have Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, same as last year. No longer have Allen Robinson, who was supposed to be the number 2. Puka Nacua, rookie. Skoranek, your favorite. Demarcus Robinson, new. Tutu Atwell and Tyler Johnson as like the definites, and then we'll go on the others. But one of those guys, hopefully it's Van Jefferson, they have to bring a Robert Woods, Brandon Cooks type energy to this offense, because you cannot, as great as Cooper Kupp is, we saw it last year, if he's your only threat on the wide receiver table, you're not going to be able to bring much else. So hopefully, and you know what? This, as great and, fun as the Skoranek season was last year, it really, truly could be this year coming up where he has the big break.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I mean, there's so many different things, like the way that their pass concepts develop, right? That's the thing with Brandon Cooks and Robert Woods and Cooper Kupp is you had all 3 layers of the field, right? You had and you were able to let those pass plays develop a little bit longer because Brandon Cooks' speed, because Robert Woods' ability to manipulate a nickel corner, because of Cooper Kupp's ability to operate outside of the slot, inside of the slot, to operate in the backfield. Like there's so much diversity with the receiver group that you had. I think that's what they're looking for in Puka Nacua, which is why they've been having those conversations and comparisons around Robert Woods, who, by the way, Robert Woods is a way better athlete coming out of college. I mean, he was a highly coveted draft pick, USC, fight on, great player, great person. Puka Nacua was a 5th round draft pick. So the comparisons are still, they still remain to be seen. But the one thing I like about Puka Nacua, and I think some of the methodologies that they're instilling within this offense is we want to be as diverse as we possibly can be. And that's what you have with players like Tutu Atwell, who essentially fills the Brandon Cooks void. You have Puka Nacua, who fills the Robert Woods void. And then you have other guys like DeMarcus Robinson, Tyler Johnson, Ben Skoranek, who could, I guess, round out, bring a little bit more depth, veteran experience, a little bit more sound from a foundational standpoint in terms of route running, blocking, doing all the right things. So, I mean, if you're going with those top 7 guys, you can go Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, Puka, Skoranek, DeMarcus Robinson, Tutu Atwell, and Tyler Johnson. But where does that leave Lance McCutcheon? Where does it leave Austin Trammell, who got some good time towards the end of the season with Baker Mayfield? And then you have other guys like Braxton Burmeister, Sam James, Tyler Hudson, Xavier Smith, Cameron McCutcheon. There's 14 receivers in this group right now.
That's not his brother, is it?
No, it's not. Maybe a cousin.
Maybe a cousin.
Yeah, you have 2 McCutcheons, both play receiver. Both of which could get cut. And then Lance McCutcheon was everybody's favorite player last year. And look, he was the 7th receiver on the roster, right under Brandon Powell. So this is in no particular order. I just feel that if you're going 11 personnel, 3 receiver set, I feel like you have a lot of really good diversity with Cooper Kupp, Van Jefferson, and Puka Nacua. And when you're an empty, you let Tutu Atwell fly, and you could run him in some of the similar packages that you ran Brandon Powell. So
yeah, I mean, my money on like one of these guys breaking out, I'm going to go Van Jefferson.
Just the last year of his contract, him and Cam.
Right, and it's it's a point where hopefully he can adapt and kind of break the top off the defense, because that's always what we wanted out of him, and go full Brandon Cooks 2018. So
Yep.
Yeah, so
moving on to, I know it was. So yeah, Cooks, and he's still playing at a high level, but it feels like a distant memory.
I think he's on the Cowboys, right?
Yeah, this year he just got moved to the Cowboys.
It's a weird call out of them, but
I'm happy for him though. Hopefully he's going to get the volume that he needs.
Yeah, definitely happy for him.
Yeah. And he's an impressive receiver. He's gone over 1,000 yards, I think 5 or 6 times in his career, which
last year with Davis Mills, he somehow managed to have an impressive year.
Yeah, he's a good player. I do miss him, but the contract that they signed to him, that was the dagger, was the contract. And they had to figure out a way to get out of it, and they couldn't. So they cut him. Then moving on to tight end, you got Tyler Higbee, Hunter Long, David Allen, Bryson Hopkins, and Christian Sims right now in camp. Last year it was just Tyler Higbee and Bryson Hopkins. They ended up keeping 4 tight ends in 2021 when it was Higbee, Bryson Hopkins, Johnny Munt, and Jacob Harris. So then they went 2 tight ends last year. We're going to find ourselves in the middle with 3 this year. That would be my projection.
Yeah, I don't think I think Hunter Long, they saw something in him to get in the trade, with Ramsey. I don't think he was just like a throwaway piece. So I think you can guarantee 2. And I don't know. I feel like Bryson Hopkins has more left on the table. And I know you got him in orange, but I could see them going, Higbee, Long, Hopkins over Allen.
I mean, Allen's the draft pick, but so is Bryson Hopkins. I think similar rounds. Hopkins was a 4th-round pick. Allen was a 5th-round pick, maybe. But the reason why I determined that I wanted to cut Bryson Hopkins was there was one moment, and it was the Super Bowl. And last year we were dealing with a suspension. Like the deal was with him last year was, hey, you're the 2nd tight end, and you're the only backup tight end on the roster. You can't do anything to get yourself suspended over a 4 to 6 week period. And that's what happened. And you leave yourself with Tyler Higbee. You have to go back out and sign, oh man, this name is escaping me. The tight end that came in over the 2021 season. I have his face in my head. It'll come back to me. But they had to, obviously had to go back and sign a player that they had already cut. And that's not something that you want to do, right? You don't have to go back and correct your mistakes. And I think Bryson Hopkins is a mistake in terms of a draft pick. It's a player that hasn't shown he's been able to consistently stay on the field. He certainly isn't an inline 3-down tight end. And I think that they have Davis Allen, who's a little bit more fundamentally sound, maybe more committed to the process, who is a draft pick from this year, who I think is going to make the roster. So I think they go with 3, and that's what they do. And Bryson Hopkins is a cut, and they made a mistake.
Yeah, I forgot about that.
The suspension last year.
Suspension entirely. Yeah.
Kendall Blanton.
Yeah, that's what it is.
Was the tight end. I didn't even look it up. I knew it was
couldn't have. You were talking the whole time. I was trying to look it up and failed. I couldn't find it.
You said something that piqued it. I'm sorry.
Good.
All right, offensive line. I'll let you take this one.
All right. So last year, Note Boom, who's obviously going to stay around. But then after that, like Brian Allen, absolutely. Coleman Shelton, definitely. Havenstein, for sure. But then, you definitely Steve Avalia, rookie. Avalia, brand new. Logan Bruss. It's a name I've heard before. And then, the prior year, lost Big Wit, lost Corbett. So we were definitely, tying together something that we thought was going to work. And lo and behold, like a lot of these guys got injured. And then, which allowed them to draft some high people this year, like Warren.
Yeah, McClendon. Yeah, he could be a player that makes the roster. I think he should.
I think he should.
He's a draft pick. Yeah, there's no reason why he shouldn't. They need tackle depth behind Joe Noteboom. You're going to go Alaric Jackson. I think he's the potential starter at left tackle, although he wasn't seen early on at minicamp today, reported by Jordan earlier today. So that makes me a little bit nervous. But Noteboom was back on the field. So I think it's going to be a kind of a 1-2 battle between Alaric and Joe Noteboom for the left tackle position. Whoever's healthier, whoever looks fundamentally more sound is going to win that job. And then whoever doesn't win the job is going to be potential depth, I think, at the guard position, or it could just be a solid backup for a tackle to where a spot where we need solid depth. And that's where Warren McClendon comes into play as a rookie that we drafted from Ohio State. That's where Rob Havenstein has been just solid for the last 8-9 years. He didn't miss a single game last year. He's going to start again at right tackle this year. AJ Curie is another guy that has a little bit of tackle and guard ability, so could probably swing both ways, but just kind of wanted to lay it out between like how many tackles we're looking to keep, how many guards we're looking to keep, and who we feel like could be on the cusp. So right now it looks like Tremaine Akram, like he's not a guy that I would be willing to cut, but considering how many offensive linemen you're going to potentially keep, it was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 last year. You're going to keep potentially 9 this year, considering how bad it was from a depth standpoint.
Definitely should keep 9 this year, which is
I'm thinking the same thing.
Yeah, which is why you got to make some cuts in like the tight end position.
That's what I was thinking. You got to make some tough decisions on the offensive side of the ball to be able to keep some depth on your roster in case things do go crazy, and so that you can consistently shuffle things. Right? If things aren't working in game, you want to have some active players that could fill in that role, especially considering LaFleur's the one that's talking about the best 5 are going to play. So let's see it happen. These are, I feel like, are our 9 locks to make the roster.
I would think he has a lot to say as well, not just with like, you know, like the weapons. I'm sure he's looking at the O-line as well.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah, him and Wendell are spending some time and making sure that they're rolling out the best possible group. But Ankrum on the bubble and then Grant Miller would be my cut amongst everybody who's in the building right now. And then defensive line, starting with the interior. You're going to go Donald, Copeland, Jonah Williams, and then Kobe Turner, Dejuan Johnson, and Taron Vincent as rookies to potentially be locks to make it. This is where it's going to get a little bit controversial, right? Because Ernest Brown and Bobby Brown, Nick, are both players that we drafted a couple of years ago. Have you seen either of them contribute yet?
Well, Bobby Brown was suspended.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Players that have gotten suspended in this past year, it seems like we've drafted enough depth across the tight end position, across the interior defensive line position, to be able to make some tough decisions and let some people walk. So Ernest and Bobby, I feel like, are in that category for me. They've been around 2-3 years. They've been around for a Super Bowl. They don't necessarily feel like they're the ones that are stepping up and contributing. Aaron Donald wanted kids that can really care and play and step into that position and really make a name for themselves. So I'm thinking some really tough decisions come at the interior defensive line position.
Yeah, and also, like, when you think about, the interior last year, obviously Donald, Greg Gaines, Robinson, I think were the big 3.
Yeah.
And now, you're looking at it like completely differently this year, where you have Aaron Donald and like a good amount of rookies. And I think that's what they want. I think they want, these young guys that can like kind of be warped and learned under the greatest of all time. So
yeah, exactly.
They're not going with what they know. They're going with what's new. And that's what I liked. One of the things I like most about this draft.
That was exactly what our decision making was when we decided to put this together, was like, hey, a couple of these young kids are really going to fight for a job.
Yeah.
And I think they're going to edge out some of the older guys who seemingly don't care enough to win a role and stick around with the Rams. So
who those probably think that they'll be picked up somewhere else as well.
Sure, of course. Yeah, I mean they're
done.
They're not too late. I mean, Bobby Brown and I think Ernest Brown were both like 4th, 5th round picks. So yeah, there's still potential for them to have an NFL career. But in my opinion, I haven't seen enough from them over the last couple of years for them to stay on the roster and contribute to this team.
Yeah.
And then from an edge perspective,
this is where it gets a little scary.
Because you legitimately you lost your top 3 guys. You lost Leonard Floyd, you lost Justin Hollins, and you lost Terrell Lewis. Terrell Lewis got cut in the middle of the season. Justin Hollins, I think, got traded or got cut in the middle of last season. And we know that Leonard Floyd just signed a 1-year deal with the Bills. Correct. And then there's for this year, I mean, you're looking at guys who are on the bottom of the depth chart last year are at the top of the depth chart this year.
Yeah.
I mean, it's Daniel Hardy, Keir Thomas, and Michael Hoyt. And then, you're going to go Byron Young. And then Nick Hampton and O'Shawn Mathis were both later round draft picks. So those guys, maybe you keep one of them. Maybe you keep 2 of them. I left that we're going to have 5 edge positions active for game day, considering they're probably going to have a 2-man rotation on both sides. So you need at least 4 guys and then any potential that somebody gets hurt. But you could probably go down to 4. You could probably keep it at 5, or you can go to 6. Depends.
I don't think they part ways with all of the rookies.
No, I'm not saying that they're going to.
Yeah. I mean, you have it at 5 right now. So that would mean that 2 of the 3 make it.
Exactly.
So yeah, I think that makes the most sense. Nick Hampton is somebody that I really liked from the draft, even if it was.
Yeah. And I mean, some of these guys, right? Like if they get cut, they get waived and they don't get signed by another team immediately, they come right back onto the practice squad. Right. So it's like we still have them in the system to be able to develop. It's just not at the same stage.
Yeah.
So that's the edge position. And then we got the linebackers, same kind of situation, right? Everybody from the bottom gets bubbled up to the top with the exception of Bobby Wagner.
Right.
Who's not back.
I mean, yeah, it was Bobby Wagner's, big thing last year is that he came back, or like he came to the Rams, division rival, like, everybody kind of learned under him. It was a bad year, but he was still taking it serious. And now all these guys that, learned under him, like, a Hummel, Jones, Rosenbaum, or Boom, they're all expected to be, pieces of what Wagner taught them and, truly make it. And I don't think they carry anybody else besides those 3 positions. Or, those 3 players.
Yeah, I don't think so either. I think it's going to be Ernest Jones and Christian Roseboom and Jake Hummel. And Hummel's going to be primarily, and so is Roseboom, going to be primarily special teams guys. And Ernest Jones is going to wear the mic in the middle of the field.
Yeah.
And it's going to be as simple as that. Instead of keeping 4 guys this year, you keep 3.
Did Wagner go back to the Seahawks?
He went back to Seattle, yeah.
Oh.
Yeah, sure did.
What the heck?
Yeah. There's so much.
That's so weird.
I know. I mean, you lose guys like Leonard Floyd, Jalen Ramsey, Troy Hill, Bobby Wagner. Like, there's so much turnover on this roster. I mean, you're looking at brand new position groups on every single position. It's pretty scarce.
And then I would say that the cornerback position probably got hit the most. This is the bleakest.
Yeah, because you lose Jalen Ramsey, Troy Hill, and David Long Jr., and they're all replaced with the other 3 players that were on the depth chart from last year as the top 3 guys.
Yeah.
So it's as simple as moving guys from the bottom up to the top. It's Jacoby Durant, Darion Kendrick, and Robert Rochelle at 1, 2, and 3. And then Travius Hodges-Tomlinson, who's obviously a rookie. We're really curious what kind of position they're going to carve out for him. Is he going to fill that Troy Hill void? Is that going to be Sean Jolly? Is he going to get some rotations in the star position, some snaps in the star. It's going to be interesting. Vincent Gray is another guy who I feel like is making a name for himself in mini camp and throughout OTAs. So, and it's the same thing as the receiver position, Nick. There's guys on this list that we're really not familiar with. Tion Johnson, Jordan Jones, Tamarcus Davis. Like, these are all names that you needed to have 85, 90 guys in the building so that you could field a legitimate mini camp and OTA. But outside of that, they're not likely to make the roster unless they do something immaculate in practice.
This was some, like, a piece in the draft where we post draft episode, we were kind of like, ooh, kind of wish they spent a little more, looked a little more into this position, because you're just bumping up. I mean, this is like a actual like office building at this point, where it's just like, all right, all the top earners, they got another job somewhere else. So we're going to promote from within, which is something that I've wanted them to do for quite some time. And now that we're actually seeing it happen, it is a little scary, because, these guys could get burnt. So
yeah.
We'll see.
Oh, it's happening though. It's happening before our very eyes.
It is.
Same deal at the safety position. You lose Nick Scott, you lose Taylor Rapp, you lose Terrell Burgess, but they're replaced with guys like Rashad Torrance, Jason Taylor, Tanner Ingle. You have Richard LeCount in the building. Colin Duncan, who's also a rookie, is in the building. But I do think that they keep 5, similar to what they did last year. I think they go Fuller, Lake, and Yeast, who you saw Yeast had some good snaps last year. Quentin Lake was nursing an injury, but you feel like he's going to be Jordan Fuller's predecessor potentially. And then there's Rashad Torrance and Jason Taylor, who could potentially fall behind Quentin Lake and Russ Yeast if Jordan Fuller were to walk out the door after this 4th season with the Rams, which is likely. They don't pay safeties. It's Fuller, Jefferson, Akers, a couple other guys that are on the last years of their deal that will have
Don't tell me Scott went to the Bills too.
Who's that?
Nick Scott.
Bengals.
Oh, move.
Yep.
That was a great pickup from them.
I think he signed a 1-year deal with the Bengals.
Yeah, that's well done out of them.
Yep. Indeed.
Because he was a huge factor on that Super Bowl team.
He's going to be great there. That Bengals really team, good. I think, is my dark horse to win the Super Bowl for this season.
I feel like they're more like, you talk about teams that are like ready to go. Like last week, or we were talking about how like the Bills are like trying to, win it right now. I think the Bengals are more ready, honestly.
Yeah, I think so too. The Bengals have been ready for a couple of years. I think they've been knocking on the door. I think this could be the season they get over the top.
Watch out for the Ravens. All I'm going to say.
I know. Could be your MVP right there, Lamar Jackson, now that he's at full speed and has every single weapon he could ever ask for.
Yeah.
This is really scary. Have you ever seen a kicker, punter, long snapper? 1, there's turnover across all 3 positions, and then 2, they're all rookies. Ever seen that before?
No. This is XFL levels of spooky.
Christopher Dunn is, I believe, the kicker that was one of our first undrafted free agent signings. And same with Tanner Brown. Ethan Evans, we drafted out of Wingate. He's the big leg from Wingate, although I think we need a new nickname for him. And then who's the last player that's on that list? Alex Ward.
Ward, yeah.
Who's from, who I believe is an overseas player. I'm not sure exactly where he's from, but apparently they all are way more mature than anyone could expect, which is nice to hear. But
I feel like it's probably easy to get lost in the shuffle of rookies right now. So as long as you're not too big of an idiot, there's so many of them.
Yeah, you can. I think it's a really good opportunity for 40+ guys to be able to all be a part of the same class. Like, imagine you're going to a job, you have a massive onboarding class of 35 to 40 people, and 25, 30 of those guys become your lifelong friends throughout, the next 10, 15 years of football. That's kind of the thought process, is like, hey, we're in it together. We're all going to buy into this culture, and we're all going to put a really good product out on the field with the help of some other really, really great Hall of Fame, legendary type players in Aaron Donald, Cooper Kupp, and Matthew Stafford. So going to be fun.
Yeah, it's going to be a good year.
I think we're all going to have a lot of fun this year. Now that the depth chart looks like it's taken some shape, obviously some things can change. It's a way too early projection, but I think it's pretty much online with what we've been talking about over the past 3 months.
Yeah. Not to mention the fact that it is, what season is this for you and I? Like our 5th year?
It's our season 6, I think.
If 6th anniversary, 6 years of Rams Brothers the Pod.
Yeah, I think that
come out and watch Rams Eagles this year.
Indeed, I'll be there. I think that calls for an opportunity, if you guys have been enjoying the podcast, if you guys have been listening along for a long time, if you guys have been watching on YouTube, the very best way that you could possibly support us right now is via a subscription on YouTube. So make sure you ram it. Just click that button. I don't do it as fancy as some of the other guys I see on YouTube, but I did like that clip.
So. Well, they like to do it where it's like, you can watch the next video right now. And and then they have that whole little like sidebar. Listen, we're a mom and pop shop, except
you
would
think in 6 seasons it could be figured out, but yeah, that's right, we are.
Well, you know what they say, 6 seasons in a movie.
Yeah, it's true. It's true. I like that. Where's the Community movie?
It's the writer's strike, just another thing to ruin our day.
Thank you guys for listening. As always, we always appreciate you. Make sure you guys comment below, not happy birthday, or if you want to comment happy birthday, you can, but comment below on what you agree with, disagree with on the depth chart, and let us know what you guys think.
Dean is petrified of turning 30. Thank you guys for listening.
Peace. Go Rams.